My name is Scott Pernice. I am the Director of Development over at the Modesto Gospel Mission. And while that is awesome and I love what I do, that's not where I came from. And so I'm excited to share a little bit about my story with you, and it actually starts right down Highway 99 in Ripon, where I was born and raised. So growing up, I grew up in a really great home. My dad was a pastor. He was the mayor of Ripon growing up. My mother was a nurse. I would consider my childhood having been a pretty typical childhood, playing outside, having fun. I had a brother and two sisters, and we didn't really need anything. So I would consider myself as having been a happy kid. Around the time I got to high school, I started to hang out with what could be considered the wrong crowd, and began experimenting with alcohol around my freshman year, which quickly developed into experimenting with weed or marijuana by my sophomore year. And when my dad found out, he said, "That's it. We're getting you out of here. We're going to send you to a private school." And so I ended up at Big Valley Christian High School my sophomore year, where I stayed all the way through until the end of my senior year when I was kicked out for fighting. And still, I would consider myself having been successful in high school. I passed my classes. I got sent back to Ripon High after that and graduated, got my diploma, even enrolled in MJC immediately after. But that lifestyle that I had started to pick up, where it was the partying or hanging out and drinking, whatever I thought made me feel cool, is really what it is what I wanted to do. So it took me probably a month to drop out of college and just take up full-time partying. It was around 18 when I tried my first Vicodin, and it wasn't recreationally, it was a prescription for me. I got prescribed it because of a minor surgery that I had. And that, I still remember the feeling. I remember thinking, wow, this feels really good. And I wanted more. And so I stuck to my pain medication regimen for about 3 days before I started doubling up, because it wasn't giving me the same effect that I was getting used to. And once that prescription ran out, that's when I decided I needed to start finding it elsewhere. So of course I went to the dentist first and tried to get them to give me a prescription, and they gave me a small one because of my phantom toothache that I had. But finally it just turned into buying them off of people and doing whatever I had to. So I'd work jobs and spend all my money on that, and live on couches eventually. By the time I was 19, I think I was staying on friends' couches. My family at that point knew that I was struggling with addiction, really didn't trust having me around, didn't really want me at home. They would try and I would blow it every single time. And so when I was 19, a buddy came up to me and he knew how much I had been spending on Vicodin, and offered me a different way. And he said, heroin is cheaper and heroin is stronger. Why don't you do that? And I immediately, I can't do heroin. And he convinced me that it's okay because it's the exact same thing. It's just an opiate. And so I did. I bought heroin that day and I never looked back. I smoked heroin for a long time. The whole time at that point, I wasn't really even getting couches to stay on, because nobody really wanted a heroin addict on their couch, and my addiction had taken me to a place where I'd shoplift from any store that I could to try to make a buck to get my next fix. I was on insurance. I went through 30-day program after 30-day program, every time relapsing within a day or two of leaving, just because the draw of that high was stronger than any other draw that I had. It was this drive. Fast forward my life to about 25. And at that point, I was a full IV heroin user. I was what you would consider to be your typical homeless drug addict, staying motel to motel, walking the streets at night. I had picked up a meth addiction that solely the purpose of my meth addiction was so that I could stay up late to try to make money. because I wanted to make money to buy more heroin. And that was it. That was my life. And I had accepted the fact that I was probably going to die this way. 3 different times I overdosed, was brought back by people. One time I overdosed in a Target bathroom and was thrown into a car and brought to a garage where I was given Narcan and brought back, basically. And then finally, I got caught for shoplifting. And my past caught up to me, and I was arrested. And when I was arrested, they took me into the Stanislaus County Jail. And I remember being terrified, and not because of being in jail. I was terrified because I wasn't going to be able to get heroin anymore. And I think I probably cried while I was there. Again, not because I was potentially facing jail or prison time, but because the only thing that I had that made me feel normal or better, I didn't have access to anymore. And that broke me. And that night I began withdrawing from heroin. And I remember my cellie laying above me, telling me to try to make my withdrawals a little bit quieter. Nurses bringing me Gatorade through the night. But the feeling that I had withdrawing from heroin is something that I wouldn't ever want to replicate, something that I knew I never wanted to do again. And it is this feeling of every bone in your body feeling like it's being tugged and pulled apart. Every piece of your skin feels like it's scratched and hurting. And the draw of heroin and what kept me homeless was that feeling right there. I knew how to fix it. I knew that, hey, if I just do a little bit of heroin, every bad feeling I have right now is going to completely go away. And so for 3 days, I soiled myself in bed. I couldn't even get up. I couldn't eat. I was vomiting constantly. They say that when you're withdrawing from heroin, it's the weirdest sensation. You're both hot and ice cold at the same time, and I can attest to that because you put a blanket on and 2 seconds later you're drenched in sweat, and then 2 seconds later you're ice cold. And imagine that for 72 hours straight. And so I did. I went through that, and when I came out, I knew that that was an experience that I never wanted to relive, an experience that was eye-opening in the sense of this is what kept me homeless, was avoiding this right here. That if I had a button that I could press that would say, hey, if you stop doing heroin, I'll make it so you don't have any withdrawals whatsoever, I would have pressed it 1,000 times over. But that draw of avoiding a withdrawal kept me on the streets and had me willing to sleep under a bush. And that was my life. From there, my life took a turn. I decided that I was going to start making a point to help other people not experience what I experienced. I moved to the Bay Area. I got a job. I started doing homeless outreach, and really my heart felt for those that were struggling with heroin addiction, and those are the people I targeted to try to help. I've had, realistically, probably 30 people that I've had stay at my house while they withdraw from heroin in order to try to help them. Sad reality is, of those 30, probably 2 made it through the withdrawals, and the rest of them took off in the middle of the night or whatever, and it's because of how hard withdrawal is. Again, you know, my life is different, and what I can tell you is this, is that if I knew that my life was going to look the way it was today, back then, I would have never done that. My life is great. You know, in 2017, I married my wife. I married way up. She's gorgeous. I have 2 daughters. We have 1 on the way. I own a home. I mean, that's the craziest part to me. I actually own a house. So I went from homeless to homeowner. And I look at what heroin tried to take from me, and it's everything that I have today. And I look at the way that heroin wanted to kill me and destroy me. And I thank God every single day that He helped me escape that. And my life has never been the same.